hope you can see how the evening will work. But I rock with my prose, and these boys rock with their rock, and then they beg for mercy, and I read for the rest of the evening because they've been rocked out. I'm going to read about Rod Stewart and the Faces. If when I was 15 someone had turned me into an adult overnight, given me stubble and money in my pocket but no responsibilities or wisdom or education, then I would immediately have left home to join the Faces. They wouldn't have had me, of course, seeing as I couldn't sing or play an instrument. It's just that to me and my friends, Rod Stewart and his band looked like us, only a couple of inches taller and thus more likely to get served in pubs. We didn't want much, but everything we did want, they seemed to have. I don't know why it was so important to us that Rod kicked footballs into the studio audience the first time he appeared on Top of the Pops, but we stared at the screen open-mouthed. None of the other bands we liked, most of whom sang songs about witches and devils and mermaids with golden hair, ever gave the impression that sport was anything but hopelessly earthbound and vulgar. The Faces' drinking was interesting to us too. We lived in the suburbs and we didn't know anything about heroin. We wouldn't have known how to use it, didn't know anybody who used it, didn't even know anybody who knew anybody who used it. We were too busy working out how to get hold of beer to worry about getting hold of hard drugs. And yet, in the early 70s, just about everyone we listened to, Clapton and the Stones, Hendrix and the Who, appeared to be swimming in heroin. We didn't mind, of course, because their habits were as much a part of them as their guitars. In fact, until the Faces started waving cans of beer and bottles of whiskey around, it never occurred to us that drink and the kind of drunkenness we were familiar with were even an option for musicians. We thought that beer was like sport, something much too prosaic and domestic to appeal to rock stars. I can't remember ever having read a book or seen a film or heard a song which contained so much as one person I recognised. A few years before, I'd been reading books about children who went to private boarding schools in the 1930s and 1940s. I was about to start reading books about young Frenchmen who killed people and didn't seem to worry much about it. The music I played most was made by rich white men who treated women badly, pretending to be poor black men whose women had left them. It sounded like this.
1, 2, 3.
Rich white guys. I didn't mind that my music and my books didn't speak directly to me. I wasn't looking for representations of myself. But the sudden realization that this was possible, that art could be made about and by people whose experiences and tastes were not unlike my own, it just seemed to make life easier somehow. Now, of course, that idea is much less exciting than it once was. It's become much harder to find books or music about and by people who aren't like we are. Our cultural world has become less exotic, and if a band or a fictional character isn't exactly like us, some of us seem insulted. But when Ronnie Lane sang about a Sunday morning market in the song Debris, I knew that he wasn't singing about a Sunday morning market in New Orleans. No one in New Orleans would say, "You was looking for a bargain." No one in New Orleans would be talking about union trouble down at the depot. This was an English song by English people I might have known. So we went to see the Faces, my friends and I, and we took beer cans with us, and then pretended to be drunker than we were, and certainly drunker than we could ever have afforded to be. The shows were always a mess, mostly because the band weren't pretending to be drunker than they were. But it didn't matter. That wasn't the point of them. The point was to sing and sway along with the songs, beer cans raised above our heads. But there were sad, tender songs on Rod Stewart's records too. We never talked about them. What would we have said? but they were important to us. We wouldn't have liked the faces so much if they hadn't been there. After all, we were 15-year-old boys and we were sad quite often, even though we never talked about it. What would we have said? When we were 15, we were sad much more often than we were drunk. And we stayed like that until we were 18, when we were drunk and sad in equal measure, although never at the same time. Drunk and sad at the same time comes much later in a man's life. Tonight, Marah are Rod Stewart and the Faces.
Yeah.
10 days ago, 11 days ago, I was in a van with these guys and we drove from Memphis, Tennessee to Oxford, Mississippi, and it was kind of the most exciting drive I've ever taken. Not because anything special happened. You look out the window, it's a bit like driving from Reading to Newbury. But I was driving from Tennessee to Mississippi, so how could it not be exciting? I'm sitting there going, there's a field, there's another field, but it's a field in Tennessee, this is incredible. And
everybody's first time, isn't it?
But just outside Memphis, we stopped at a gas station and I went in to buy some cigarettes, and to my amazement, I thought, what a great country this is. There was a Christian, evangelical Christian concession stall actually in the petrol station. And I couldn't resist. I bought this baseball cap, which I shall wear for the next reading. For those of you at the back who can't see it, it says, Satan is a big fat liar.
Welcome to the Bible Belt.
And I say, you know, everything that America has, we get eventually, but I really can't see that we're going to be able to go to the Heston service station and get this baseball cap anytime soon. So, but I'm no theologian, but if I were a Christian, surely there are better grounds to attack Satan on than for his fatness. He did worse stuff than that, didn't he? He was like a bad guy, I don't know. Got an essay about Bob Marley.